What's up, bass players? Jesse Wood here, and guess what? You are watching Jesse TV. More specifically, another hard rocking, just bass shredding, teeth gritting episode of. I am so excited for today's episode because I have a guest like no other. He's actually in a whole nother continent, and he is part of an amazing band that just shreds. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about guest bassist Thomas O'Malley of Steel Mage. So let's welcome him in here. Thomas, thanks for being on the show.
What's good? Yeah, thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah. So Steel Mage, like, bro, you kind of shred. So one of the more recent shows, you were just shredding in the comments. Just see what I did there? Shredding in the comments.
Right.
But you were shredding in the comments, just like great gear questions, like specific solid questions. It was on the episode of frequently asked questions. Guys, if you haven't seen that one, I cover a lot of just practical things, wisdom that I've learned over the years being a bass player. So me and Thomas connected immediately over just being bass gear nerds. And before you knew it, it's like we couldn't schedule a show fast enough. I actually usually don't do shows this quick in succession, but we had to make it happen. I'm going out of town tomorrow. I wanted to make it happen. So bro, thanks for being on the show. And as you can see, guys, you can already tell like some of our similarities. We're already geeking out a little bit with the basses in the background. They are fan fret. They're both multi-scale. It's beautiful. So, Thomas, how did you get started playing bass? I mean, how long have you been playing too?
So yeah, I've been playing for nearly 4 years. I've been playing since around Christmas time of 2017, and I wasn't originally a bass player. I was actually a drummer for a punk band in my old high school.
That's
And
acceptable.
there was another band in one of the higher years or grades if you're American, um, and they had a full lineup. So they had two guitarists, a vocalist, a bassist, and a drummer. Typically, and my band only had two guitarists, one of which was a vocalist as well, and myself, who was the drummer of the band. And I still play drums, nowadays. And I'd never seen or heard a bass before. And when I did hear the bass for the first time, I was like, that is something I've never heard before. And that's like the best thing I've ever heard as of the moment. So, I asked him a few questions like, what is that instrument? Why does it have four strings? And, he explained to me that it was a bass. And from that point on, I knew that there was a new instrument that I wanted to learn how to play. And here we are now. I'm in two metal bands and I do session work every now and then. And, I've got a whole collection of gear. I've had a lot of gear in the past. And, just bass is everything now. Bass over anything.
That's awesome, bro. So guys, he's only been playing bass 4 years, but is already ridiculous. And I was gonna save this till later in the show, but I just already want to hear it again. Let's bring in this clip from Spotify. This is his band Steel Mage. They are on the Spotify. Find them. There's actually a link in the description of this video. You can click it, check them out. And because I'm a bass player, I love their music. It sounds amazing. But I'm gonna play this clip here, and this is my man Thomas just getting ready to shred on the bass. So let's just check it out. Bro, like my computer just lit on fire. looking at this thing. Like, I'm gonna have to file an insurance claim or something and get a new computer.
It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. That bass solo, as I was saying before the live stream, that song, even though it's like one of my favorite of our songs, obviously because of the solo, it's my favorite song of ours to listen to, as well as our new single, Mandatory Detention, which is, while I'm here, on all streaming platforms, Spotify and what have you. But that song is the most exhausting song to play because of my technique. I gallop with 3 fingers. And when I'm on stage or in the studio and just hammering them strings as hard as I can, triple finger galloping, it's a sweat. It just completely ruins your energy. And even in the studio, it took a few times to record it. And but when I got it down and got the tone dialed in with that Darkglass B7K Ultra, it was a plug-in pedal, so but you'd never be able to tell the difference, of course. But it was just amazing to listen to, and knowing that I was the person who wrote it, I'm quite humbled of myself.
Bro, no, it's absolutely ridiculous. I have so many Darkglass pedals on my board. Right. By the way, I have the vintage Ultra. Yeah. I don't need as much of the distortion as you guys are going for with what I normally play, but oh my gosh, the tone is ridiculous. Guys, let's just have a tone pause break, a moment from our non-sponsors. But Darkglass, if you're out there and you want to sponsor this video, please do it, guys. Share, tag, blow up Darkglass. If anybody knows anybody at Darkglass, just let them know we're loving on them in this moment. Like, guys,
we're about to have a full live stream on Darkglass pedals.
So good, because they preserve just all the tonal quality of the frequency spectrum as you're coming through. But no, it sounds so good. You're talking about a galloping technique. I want you to show the other bass players watching this, just kind of break it down. You don't have to do the whole thing, but at least if you could grab your bass and just show them, or maybe in a way that you can show them, what do you mean by that galloping technique? So
forgive me if you can't hear my amp very well. Forgive me if you can't hear my amp very well. It's late at night. But in terms of my technique, my pedal's not working. My wireless is.
I know. I threw you on the spot. Even if we can't hear it, at least there you go. Yeah,
there you go. So what I mean by galloping is, as a generic bass player, you're going to obviously right from the start be hopefully playing fingerstyle, which is of course where you put your hand on the any string and you pull your finger back like so to rest it on the string behind. However, in metal, because of the fast riffs, people tend to use picks, for that really fast stuff. But if you feel like challenging yourself, if you feel like, taking the fingerstyle to the next level, or if you're just simply lazy like me and don't want to take picks anywhere, what you can do is interpret your ring finger or third finger into your playing. So say if you were to play just a simple run of, I guess, jogging notes. I don't know what the theoretical term for them is right at this moment, but so as you would usually do, let's play a D. Generically. But
right.
A metal bass player, if you want to interpret your ring finger in to give you a faster set of notes, it would sound a bit like this. And that's just broken down. And once you can, nail that, instead of having to play really fast with your 2 fingers, you can play really fast with 3 fingers. And I guess, if you want to use a pick, you can get the same sort of thing. But as a fingerstyle player, the galloping technique is probably the most efficient. If you're used to playing fingerstyle, if you're going to go into metal as a fingerstyle player, there's no point, unless you want to challenge your playing and push yourself further, there's no point picking up a pick if that's, your best with your fingers. You could save yourself so much effort. And when you actually do get it down, the technique uses for things that aren't just metal. Say if you're playing in the high register and then you need to go right down to the E string, you've got a third finger right there, which can just easily reach the other strings. And some bass players use their entire hand to mute the strings while they're played up in the higher register. So you could even use your little finger, but I don't know any bass players who use their little finger.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Before you put the bass down, let's talk about it. So that's a Ibanez SR, right?
MS 805. Yes, this is my multi-scale Ibanez bass, and you will see this live. You will see it on my Instagram and Facebook and YouTube channel. This is the only bass I own right now, and the reason for that is because I had three basses. I had a 5-string Ibanez, a 4-string Ibanez, and a short scale Squire bass. They were all really good basses. Other than my 5-string, I wasn't too pleased with that because if you notice in the lower range of Ibanez's, the pickups are really standard and generic, and all the little circle magnet things are all dotted where the strings would be. However, the circle magnets didn't line up with each string, and I don't know if that happens with all basses like that, or if it's just the fact that I spent £200 on a 5-string bass. That I could have got a way better bass than that. You know, the wood wasn't, you know, the back plates weren't like lining up with the wood and stuff. It feels like it was taken from a 4-string. But anyway, I had it, and that's why I wanted the 5-string, because when I learned how to use a 5-string bass, I realized that it wasn't just efficient for drop tunings, even though it's extremely efficient for drop tunings, but you can also do a lot with it. So, for example, in our original music, there is a section of the song that it's like you hold chords down, so it goes. But instead of playing the 3rd fret of the A, I would move down to the 1st fret of the B, just to give it the lower octave and frankly more of a thump. So yeah, I got used to how a 5-string works, you know, opening the range of notes. But the reason I got rid of it is because, you know, for trading all 3 of them basses, I've managed to get myself one of these, and obviously because it's my only bass and it's a very expensive bass, I'm going to be taking as much care of this as possible. And this bass is the Ibanez SRMS 805, and I'm not too sure on the specs off the top of my head, but I know that the fretboard is Panga Panga. I think the body's mahogany, and the wood is just the most amazing thing I have ever seen. Absolutely stunning woodwork. Bartolini pickups, which are great for pretty much everything. You know, if you want to, you know, roll off your treble and boost your mid, a bit of like that sort of, you know, jazz fusion sort of. It's not my strong point, but you know, extremely dotty, extremely good for staccato. The sustain is good depending on the strings that you get, because obviously you do need to buy longer strings, but you are limited unless you go for, you know, Dingwall stock strings, which are amazing. But the bass is just, you know, obviously it's fan fret, multi-scale. String tension is amazing, especially for somebody like myself who has quite an aggressive style of playing. And also it's really good for slap as well, because if you're an aggressive slap player, then, you know, I guess it the tension will battle with your strength a little bit. And I guess it's a good compressor as well.
Yeah. No, it's such a good bass. I actually looked up the specs of it, and you were right on. I was actually curious on the scale lengths, because I know that Ibanez SR models, the standard are a 34-inch scale, while their BTB, their kind of big brother, are 35-inch scale. I borrowed a friend's SR. I had an older version, like now out of date Ibanez, and it got stolen. So when I went back to just a season of picking up the bass again after about a year and a half of not having a bass, a buddy of mine had an SR, and I was like, man, I love this bass. It was a 5-string, but playing that low B, it just felt so floppy and flimsy.
Right.
So when I went to buy one, I went to the local music shop here, and I saw the Ibanez BTB, and it captivated me. It was gorgeous. I picked it up. It was mahogany body like that, neck through. It felt like holding an actual tree, but just an extra inch in the scale length just transformed that low B with so much sustain. My style that I'm playing generally is more like rock, actually Christian rock, and most of the time I need the notes to sustain. If I'm hitting a low B, I could be going 8, maybe a 16 count on just that one note sometimes, and I want sustain for days. Of course, help with dark glass electronics hyperluminal compressor, and
Right.
the harmonic booster helps that a lot. But this bass, which is my custom, actually have the fan fret at 36, and the one you have there, they did stretch it to 34 and a half on the
Right.
E.
Yeah. And I should point out, for multi-scale basses, a mistake that every bass player will learn at some point, whether it's a 4-string, 5-string, 6-string, 7-string multi-scale bass, at some point you will always try and buy the standard 5-string bass strings, or 4-string or 6 or 7-string bass strings that you would generally use on your normal fretted instrument. And we all make the mistake of buying strings that aren't quite long enough to pass the note. And I made that mistake once, the day before a gig. So what I had to do is grab a tiny bit of tissue paper and put it underneath the B string just to lift it off the first fret. And that's just extremely irritating because I loved Ernie Ball so much. But now I'm with Diodario, and it's just, I prefer them now, you know, because I've gotten used to them, and I realize that I like more firm strings rather than slippy strings. If you were to apply something like fast fret, you know, to save your strings, it would make Ernie Ball regular slinkies extremely slippy. And I guess if you were to get used to that, then yeah, it would be perfectly fine. But now that I'm used to Diodario, it's a whole new level to my playing. In the
I think that's actually what I have on mine, because at 36-inch scale, this bass is almost it's like as big as me. If I stretch my left hand out, if I'm grabbing it in F, down there on the E string, or trying to hit a low C, my arm's almost stretched out like this. Like I have to kind of push the body down to get it. The thing is, it's so long, and not only that, they did a through body option, as if I could find strings like long enough. That you notice I've got the A, D, and G going through, but the B and E they just wouldn't make it.
What strings are they?
They're the D'Addario.
They're just the super long scale ones.
Yeah, just nickel.
Nickel. Yeah, I was going to say pro steel or nickel, because I'm a pro steel guy, because it goes with my dark glass really well. And
steel for what you're trying to do. Those steels, they're I need a little bit softer and rounder.
Of course. And while I'm here, if it's all right, I will show you what pedal I'm using. I'm using a Dark Glass Microtubes X, and this thing is, other than my noise gate pedal and my wireless pedal with a tuner built in, this is the best addition to my pedal collection I could have possibly ever bought. And the main reason for that is because not only is it the most aggressive distortion pedal I've ever bought, but it really makes the high frequencies, especially in the high register of the bass, it really makes them ring. And one thing that does do, which is extremely beneficial, and if you're going to get the Microtubes X, you're going to hear this quite a lot, but because it bursts the high frequencies, it makes your dead strings sound brand new. And, it really helps cut through in the mix as well, because more of a clangy tone, it's extremely metal and just what you would want for that style of playing.
Yeah, no, your tone, just in that clip we listened to, it's in that perfect sweet spot in the mix. Right. It's so good. Like, I'm a bass player, so I'm like, can we boost that?
Every bass player is like that. You just want to hear the bass in each song, And the pedal I actually used in the studio, as I mentioned before, was a B7K Ultra, but the tone that I get with the Microtubes X, I really wish I'd used that plugin instead, because I much prefer it. The reason I went for the Microtubes X, admittedly, is because I didn't have enough money to afford the B7K at the time.
Okay.
I was just impatient. I wanted a dark glass pedal because I knew that was, Sans Amp is just, I couldn't decide between the two, the Microtubes or the Sans Amp. And I figured with the dark glass Microtubes X, it was probably one of the most modern sounds you could possibly get. Whereas even if you were to get an almost identical sound with the Sans Amp, I feel like there's still that, more vintage tone over it, and really like brings out the, the warmer tube sort of frequencies. But personally, because of the music that I play, I play for a band called Gearheads, and that's a gent band. So the Microtubes X is just brings everything out. You know, you plug your bass in, scoop the mids, turn the high up to the max, and then just crank the drive and the volume, and you're set. You'll cut through anything.
That's awesome. The Sans amp, I actually have a review video on YouTube that I did, I think 6 years ago, of the programmable Sans amp, and I love it. And I'll tell you, having owned that pedal, you made the best choice for you, because the Sans amp, while it has a lot of drive potential, it brings in a lot of noise when you start getting past 12 o'clock on the drive. I think the most aggressive tone I had, it was somewhere around 1 o'clock. I wanted a little bit more, but I started to get agitated by just the static noise that I dropped it back to find kind of the sweet spot. I played for a band. I've been playing more so as a contract bass player. I'll just play with different bands to get gigs and stuff like that. And I did one heavy metal show, and so I cranked that Sans amp. And it was good for doing it one time, but if I was in a heavy metal band, well, back then Dark Glass Electronics didn't even exist, but I'm so thankful for them, because I went through trying to get really good tone with all the extra noise and stuff like that, because of just older circuitry, or things that were just trying to emulate a lot of classic tone. Where what I love about Dark Glass is they're engineering modern and new tone, but you have so much room to still engineer. Like with my vintage Ultra, it sounds amazing. I've engineered great tone. It sounds warm, and by the time you pass through the hyperluminal compressor, which I use the Supersymmetry model on that compressor, it already adds some warmth. And then the harmonic booster, my tone, it's just full and clean, but it doesn't sound all solid state. It sounds good. It's got a good warm tone. And I want to talk about that galloping technique, and I want to just back you up on a couple things there. Whenever I'm talking to bass players, or especially if I'm training a bass player or doing lessons or something like that, even if the band they're in, if the tone they're looking for requires a pick, I always encourage them to practice fingerstyle. It's almost easier to adapt with a pick than it is to really learn and stretch yourself to be able to play with your fingers. And I'd rather be able to choose, like, okay, I can play this with my hand. I have the endurance, I have the stamina, but because I want a pick sound, I'm going to pick it up purely for the tone. If you're picking up a pick because you need it to be able to play the part, then I would encourage your bass players to practice fingerstyle, like really push through in a way that I never expected. Actually had kind of a tragic thing happen several years ago. I used to work at an auto shop, and I was working on my own car. I was putting in some custom exhaust, and we had an issue with one of the lifts, and my middle finger got caught in the safety part of the lip of the lift, and it actually, I don't know if you can tell by the camera, this is my middle finger. It smashed the tip of my middle finger right off.
Yeah,
you almost can't tell just looking straight at it. But what happened was I had already begun using that galloping technique, as you call it. And I was really concerned. I was like, man, I'm going to be just like single finger over here, just like this guy for the rest of my life. But after having already started to involve my third finger, now that's the only way I can play. My middle finger never hits the strings. I'm only ever first.
Right, yeah. That's really, really convenient. And I remember playing a gig down in a place called Fairford, which is near London in the United Kingdom. I remember playing a little gig there with a cover band, and the bass player, that's the first time I've ever seen someone using their ring finger, and it wasn't a metal band at all. As I mentioned, it can be used for everything really, and they were more of a rock covers band. And I was swapping with the bass player because they have a very long set list to last a lot of the night. So, I would swap over so we could have a drink every now and then. But I noticed he used his third finger. So I said to him, "What's with the third finger? Why is that?" And he said, if something ever happens to one of your three fingers, then you've always got a spare finger. And if you lose that spare finger, it's okay. You've still got two fingers left.
Yeah.
And I do remember once, I'm a big fan of the bass player Eugene from the band Ginger. And I have had a couple of conversations with him actually about technique and his songs and stuff. And he made a video a while ago saying the reason he uses finger style more over a pick is because, even with just fingers, it doesn't matter how efficient you are without any of them. For the overall sound, with fingers, you get more of a thumpy, sort of chesty hit, a lot more low end. And, I guess different tones of different basses sound different depending on the player. That's my opinion. And, I fully back him up on that because I can notice because, plastic is plastic, but fingers are fingers, and I've reminded myself there is one thing that I do actually. And if anyone watches my videos on Instagram, you'll notice that when I'm playing with a pick, what I will do is, because I'm a slap player, and I go as far as using all three of my fingers to slap, because I always wanted to do that thing that Clay Gober does from Polyphia and do that that triplet sort of pop. I don't know how he does it. I'm trying to do it, but one thing I do is sort of replace the pick with my thumb, as if I'm like slapping the string, but like with a pick, and then I slap the higher strings with my middle finger, and it's extremely convenient. You can get a very genty tone out of using a pick. You can get any tone out of using a pick. But with that hybrid technique, it allows me to slap and play pick, because if you watch any of our live shows or if you watch me play any Steel Mage songs, you'll notice that I don't play with a pick and I play with fingers, and I slap in very unnecessary places. It's just really fun to do, So yeah, there's that. So fingers definitely bring out more of the low end in your playing. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I want to briefly bring the relevance of fan fret multi-scale basses again, just to every kind of bass player that may watch this. I don't play heavy metal regularly, but the fan fret, it's not just a Dingwall thing. It's not just heavy metal. They have just figured out, because of the high demand that they place on lower tunings, that they need that stretch. It's really a necessity, where for other genres like myself, to me, it feels like an upgrade. Is it necessary? No. But everybody that hears this bass has even heard me play a lot with that chord there, which is a 5-string, 34-inch scale. Nothing wrong with it. But after switching to multi-scale, and even today, I played this morning. I played 2 different gigs back to back, and the sound guy, like, I couldn't even get off stage before the sound guy was coming up to me like, "Bro, you make my life so easy. Your tone is so good. Like, how can we hire you full time to come every week and play?" I was like, "Well, I don't have that kind of availability, but guys, it's these little things like this that you're not just making your life good, but especially if you're trying to do well as a band, or maybe you're a contract bass player like me, you want gigs. It's the little nuances. If you're doing the exact same thing that everybody else can do, but your tone is stronger, your presence is fuller. You've got that. And finger style, just to back you up there, Thomas, is that playing with the finger helps preserve and produce as much of the natural tone that is created from the string over the pickup. And it's just the way it is. And I can tell you, I know even more for certain, because if I hit what it is in the end of your finger, that's soft. You have your bone, then you have what's called the pulp. And it's almost, in an X-ray, it almost looks like the end of a Q-tip.
Right.
It's the pulp, and it's soft. So that's the part of my middle finger that got smashed. and the bone was actually sticking out. Like it was
Not very pleasant.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. And so what it is now, I still have part of the fingernail, but what I'm missing is the pulp. And that's the magic part. So can I hit the string with my middle finger? The answer is yes, but here's the problem. If I alternate between these two fingers, they don't sound the same. Because I'm missing the pulp in my middle finger, the way it runs across the string, it loses low end. This is still finger, but it's missing that pulp. So I can't play with my middle finger because it's noticeably different. And to have it alternate, like, you can already hear the accent.
Yeah, because obviously, as you've said,
it's harder and it's tougher. Now, if I'm finger drumming on my desk, I got a kick and a snare. So, so it's cool for that. But just missing that pulp part of your finger, it changes the tone and very noticeably. So, yeah, you nailed that on the head.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's extremely unfortunate and inconvenient that you've lost that part, and I'm sorry to hear about that because I bet that was really disheartening. But yeah, you've got a backup, you've got your ring finger, but it's still a bit annoying, and it probably would have still gotten a bit of I guess getting used to. Is that the correct? It's really convenient. And one thing I do want to say myself is that before you were telling me, and this is a bit off topic to technique, but you were saying how with SansAmps you wanted to try and get a certain tone, so you were reeling in all these different pedals. However, what I've noticed nowadays, and you've got the Vintage Ultra, which gives you a dark glass SansAmp. That's the way I've been seeing it this whole time. But with dark glass, and as I mentioned about the high frequencies, you've got it all there. And there are many preamp pedals like MXR do some. I'm not too sure about Boss, but with dark glass, what I find is that you need to use less pedals because, what I'm personally after a harmonic booster at the moment to bring out more of my low end because
it's an amazing pedal. You'll love it.
Right. Yeah. I've been looking at it for ages and I thought it was a boost pedal. You press it and it makes your tone louder, like guitars do. And, TC Electronic do a good one of them. But then I found out that the dark glass one wasn't really necessarily for that purpose. So the reason I wanted the harmonic booster, as I said, was to bring out the low ends and probably more of the low mids because of the amount of high frequency the X brings out and how much drive it has. It cuts off the top of your low end. It's a bit disheartening really because it makes you want to change up your entire tonal settings on your amp head and on your bass and stuff. And what's quite annoying about my bass for that is the fact that when I roll up the low end on the bass, it makes, because I have my my bass on my amp head, I've got TC Electronic BQ 500, have the bass rolled off until about halfway, 12 o'clock, just to allow, I guess less of the clip from my bass, because I've got really, really powerful low end.
Yeah.
Because of my Bartolinis. I don't know if it's the Bartolinis. Well, that's obviously what you would blame all the preamp on. I don't know. So when I turn the bass up on my instrument, it makes the low end on my amp and the cabs seem really poppy, if that makes sense, really dirty. And I don't really like that because I really like a smooth low end and then able to add a really clangy distortion on the top of it. So it's quite unfortunate the fact that when you turn the distortion on, it slices the top of your low end. And it is quite disheartening. But going back to the EQ thing, Dark Glass do pedals like I think the X Ultra and the Alpha Omega, I don't know. But they do have preamp pedals as well that have EQs built in, and people who want to go direct into the PA, that's probably the best thing to do if you don't want to carry huge cabinets around. That's what I plan on doing. I want a B7K so I can as well as have more tone shaping, I can also go direct in. But the thing is, what's quite convenient is like most amp heads nowadays, it's tempting to just stay with what I've got, other than, you know, after the harmonic booster, because my amp head has a DI on the back as well. And I already record direct into my interface, you know, when it comes to demos and recording for artists, so I can get my exact tone. And I like the way it sounds through my interface, and I also like the way it sounds through my cabs. And if I can have that sound live, then it'd be amazing.
Yeah. The Dark Glass Vintage Ultra that I have, it has a 4-band EQ with selectable low mid and selectable high mid. So there's a lot of range to really find what it is that you want to boost, but also find what you want to cut, which is actually what I use the selectable. I think the high mid, there's a certain frequency that, and I don't know off the top of my head, but to my ear, at least with my setup, it's almost too harsh. So I find that one frequency and I select that one and then I cut it just specifically right there. And it helps, you know, a lot of times when you look at somebody's EQ, a lot of bass players just like scoop it. They do the smiley face or whatever. They just scoop that. And there is something to that, but it's more amazing when I think you can preserve as much as possible while still being happy with what's going on. And the pedal just does a really good job at helping me cut the frequency that I don't like. And then also on the low mids, I'm boosting a little bit, kind of that sweet spot that kind of helps me cut through naturally before I add any drive or distortion. But with what you were saying about the low end that you're having, almost kind of an over presence of low end, what I can tell you about that, the bass that you have, the body being mahogany, definitely highlights the low end. It makes the low end boomy. My BTB was like that, which is honestly, I played that BTB for years. And I realized that I was spending more time trying to manage the low end so that the rest could shine, which is why I ended up when I got my hands on this Court, the Swamp Ash body. It's much lighter, first of all, than mahogany, but it didn't have that problem of me trying to fight the low end. Now, conversely, I had to now boost some of the low end, but the good news is that bass has a Mark bass preamp in it, so it's got really great onboard electronics. But once I added the Dark Glass, I was actually just sending a flat EQ from the bass, which is generally what I do on all my basses, because I utilize tone shaping pedals or a preamp. I'll send a flat EQ from my bass, and I'll just blend the pickups for kind of the natural tone that I want. Then I'll begin to work with the pedal, because you can easily start messing things up. Not only that, you pull your bass in and out of the case, and you're doing gigs, you're setting it down, people are bumping it, and if you're relying on the exact spacing or spot for your knobs, chances are it's going to be hard to get the same tone, or you'll knock it and not realize. So it's so much easier when I strap my bass on to just find that center detent on all my EQ knobs and just boom, 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 make sure I'm there, make sure my pickup split knob is where I want it. And then now I'm looking at the board, what's in front of me, and what I can dial in more specifically. But just a little tip for you guys out there. I don't think we're dealing with the stigma anymore. I know there's a lot of purists out there that'll say no pedals, nothing, just do it all from your bass. Yes, I'm with you. But I'll just say nowadays pedal prices are very reasonable. And like Thomas, what you were saying, you can get a good preamp. Doesn't even have to be the most expensive thing out there, but you just carry this little thing around. Plus, most gigs and things that I go to, we're using in-ear systems, and they don't want a cabinet on stage. So what do? You replace your cabinet and all that business with a solid preamp. If you think about it that way, let me take all the money I would invest in a cabinet and a head and put it into a solid preamp or a good tone shaping pedal and a good DI. You can pair them up that way and work your tone that way, because guys, it's 2021. A lot of gigs technology has already shifted, and it's continuing to shift. Thomas, you noticed my PV right here.
Yeah,
By the way, you already knew exactly what it was. It's a 2x8. I had a massive Ampeg 15. I had a Mark Bass 212, and I used to carry them both because the 212 combo from Mark Bass would actually power my Ampeg 15-inch combo, and the thing was ridiculously stupid loud and awesome. It had the low end with the 15, the highs were articulated with the 212, but it was always way too much. I was like feathering the volume knob as things have shifted with doing different gigs in different places. And I finally said, you know what? If I'm going somewhere, I don't know if it's in-ears or not or what it's going to be like. I get to throw that in the car and it just ride down the street. And worst case, I have it on stage as a personal monitor if my in-ears go out or whatever else. So I would encourage you guys to think about that and where you're going and your gigs and stuff like that, and at least be adaptable with your equipment, because you can't always take an 8x10 or a 6x10 or something with you, especially if you're flying. You really can't take any cabinet with you. So, and they've got a cabinet on the ground. I don't have a clue what it's going to be. So if I'm bringing essentially my tone with me, then I can plug into a cabinet, make the EQ flat, and just adjust the volume, and I'm at a good starting spot already.
Right. Yeah, I was going to add on to that because, as you've said, if you're flying, it's really difficult, and you've, brought this to me now. We're meant to have a show in West Virginia in support on a festival with bands like Attila and Soulfly. And the first thing that was going through my head was, right, money, flight tickets, visa. How am I getting that fat fridge over to America? How am I getting it to West Virginia? And the answer is I'm not. And conveniently, I have a DI on my amp head. But as you said, to fly with an amp would be ball sweat, ball ache. So having it all in one pedal board is the most convenient thing ever. And, especially after getting the Microtubes X, I want an entire pedal board of Dark Glass stuff now, because it comes with everything: EQ, distortion, preamp, compressor. And I'm not sure about, I don't think they do noise gates, do they? But that's not a problem. I've got one of these Rowan tiny hand palm sized noise gates, and it's the best thing I've ever bought. But yeah, and just to add on to your point, and it's extremely convenient that you also have your PV Minimax. I don't know if that's what it's called. I know it's a Mac. Yeah, right. I'm a huge fan of PV, which is why I knew about it. I want the Mini Mega head really badly. 1,000 watts of constant power. Maybe it's too much, but it's still be amazing. And and as you were saying, in-ear monitors, that is something that I think all musicians at some point should invest in. I don't use them, but I've used them once. Not mine, they were somebody else's. And, once you figure out how they work, which is a bit of a ball ache because there's not many clear instructions on YouTube nowadays for stuff like that. But when you do finally figure out how they work, for me personally, that's all that's ever on my mind. You can use it at home if you've got a mini mixing desk, I guess. But for live performances, if you're the drummer, then you can have in-ears running into the PA and you can just have a click. You don't need to have the whole band using in-ears. It's not something you do when you get massive. You can do it for pub gigs, you can do it for tiny clubs, with cover bands, and I used to have this issue where, because my bass was so sat perfectly in the mix according to the sound guy, which I've never really settled in with because I'm very fussy about being heard. And thankfully I've got the Dark Glass for that now, so that's, a bonus. But if your live mix is perfect, but you're having trouble hearing yourself, you can turn your own in-ear mix up. So you can hear your presence a bit more, and I guess that will make you feel a bit better if you can't hear yourself, through the and it's just so much less effort, being able to fly with just, because pedal boards a lot of the time come with bags, like gig bags, so you'll be able to just, take a few cables, your pedal in the bag and your bass on a plane with you. And it's just much more convenient, having everything in pedal boards. And yeah, as you were saying, people who like go straight into the ramp and they're like, oh, you should use the tone from your bass. And yeah, it's very debatable. I used to go directly into my amp head, but I love the tone of my old SR 370E. Tone was super clangy. In all different ways, it was an Ibanez, and that's just what made me want to go from Ibanez, because there was a tone with Ibanez like none other. Yeah. And I'm not really sure about woods. I was unaware that mahogany or whatever affected how the deepness worked. I mean, I kind of understood it, but it wasn't really something I cared about. And I guess I have only played a couple of gigs where the sound guy has been accepting of what I'm running with, straight into my amp head, straight into the PA. And sometimes he would turn me right down because my bass was too powerful. But because they're the sound guys that work at that specific venue, they'll just, I guess, not really fuck around with, sorry about that. They won't really fuck around with your EQ. They'll just turn you right down in the mix. Instead of saying, right, could you lower your bass a little bit? Yeah. They'll just turn you down. They don't care. They're getting paid, So, if you want a specific tone, you need to get that specific tone. And there's so many different ways of doing it nowadays. And especially in something as minimalistic as a pedal board.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually talking about sound guys and experience with sound guys. I was on one of the Let's Talk Bass episodes with a guest. We were with my buddy Jeremy Oldra, who's a sound engineer. We talked about the importance of building relational equity with sound engineers, because one of the things that I said on the show is that sound engineers are the gatekeepers to the audience. Nobody will hear you. You could be playing your guts out, and it's the worst when I'm like sweating and giving it my all, and then I get off stage and people are like, man, I couldn't hear you. Like, I could have sat home. Like,
yeah, I've had that a few times,
especially if it's something I wasn't getting paid for. Like, I was just doing it for a friend or something, show up and spend all the time on, and then no one can hear you. Like, oh my gosh. So like, you know what, on the way in, I'm gonna let the sound guy know what I got going on. Even today where I went, it's a place that I haven't been many times, but the moment I walk in, the sound guy's there, and he's like, hey, Jesse. He's like super excited. And after the gig for the second one, we were just around in the hall just chatting about gear and sound and stuff like that. And then by the second gig, he told the guy that was like actually manning the board to ride my fader to make sure that I was heard this second time around even more so. So I was like, yes, this is what I'm talking about. You make friends with don't bass players don't make fans in the audience, make fans behind the soundboard, because the sound guys are really the only guys that are really, unless it's another bass player, they're the only guys that are really gonna appreciate us. And that sound guy today, he was just like, man, you make my job so easy. Everybody else is just judging me by my energy. They really have no clue what I'm doing or not do. They just know the overall sound doesn't suck. And I just look like I know what I'm doing on stage. They're like, man, you're awesome. But they couldn't tell me what I'm doing.
I can relate to that as well. I throw myself about quite a lot on stage to the point where I think it's too much. I'm in a thrash metal band and a gent band. I'm not in Beartooth, so I've got no reason to throw myself around to the point where it gives me brain damage. But so I guess people, not to be cocky, but people have seen me and been like, you're awesome on stage, amazing. And as you said, the overall song would have been all right, And I guess people are more likely to compliment any performance on the stage show and the stage presence, because when you're on the stage, it's your job to engage the crowd. Not only are they there for the music, but they're there to have a good show, if you're looking at if you're playing bass and you're looking into the audience and you lock eyes with someone and your head's just going at it, you know, they're more likely to go at it as well, you know, because they're feeling what you're feeling. And you know, regardless of your tone, I mean, yeah, it's annoying when no one can hear you, but if you're grooving to the music, everyone else will.
Yeah, that's it's two things. What you're saying, and I'll sum it up like this: you want people to hear you, but you also want them to feel you. And I always crack up for some reason. And bass players, I got a little bone to pick with us as an overall community, and I'm gonna bring it to the surface. I'm gonna talk about it briefly. I'm not gonna harp on it, but there's a lot of times I'm watching videos of bass players and everybody, like guitar players, like he's just, you know, drummer got the stink face. He's in the jam, and vocalists are moving, and here's my man on the bass.
Yeah, right.
Like stoic, but just nailing the notes. Like, at least you're nailing the notes because you're not doing anything else for me. But so if no one can hear you, what are you adding? So can they feel you? Can the audience feel what you're presenting? Not only that, but I found that my movement will also help with. So I play with a variety of musicians, variety of skill levels, a lot. So whether it's a drummer that's having a hard time knowing where we are, or sometimes a vocalist. A lot of times I'm even directing the music with a talkback microphone that's in the in-ears, and just having the movement gives people confirmation that we're on time, that we're on in the right place, that we're jiving, that we're grooving. And when it comes to performance, which is what it is, you know, music on stage, live, it's a whole experience. People watch things like Hamilton. They go to Broadway shows not just to hear something good. They can listen to the album, but they'll pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars to have this whole experience of not just the sound, but the stage presence.
Right.
And one thing that's kind of known for anybody that's on the stage that was in Spinal Tap, when he was like, this one takes it to 11. And he's like, this note takes it to 11. You have to be at like an 11 if you want people to respond at a 7 or 8. And that'll be the extreme people that hit you there. I've had people that have just like mean mugged me a whole show, but then they're the first one to catch me coming off the stage. Like, man, that was so awesome. Just watching you, and usually it's like not even, man, that bass line you did. It's like just watching you just gave me so much energy. I just felt like we were vibing. And if I'm on the left side of the stage, like I will own this section. Like this is my crew. Like you and me, we're in this thing. We're going on a journey. We're going for a ride. It's going to be awesome. I don't know what they're doing over there, but us, and like really making eye contact. And that goes into the importance of really knowing your music well, knowing your songs well, no matter what your genre is. If you're having to use chord charts and stuff like that, please do your best to memorize it, because then you can take yourself to another level as a musician. You can think more creatively. You can be confident instead of what's the note again. Now you can think about the feel, and do I want to slide up the octave, or maybe drop it off, or do I want to go low? And you're locking in with the drums, and you're jiving. You can tell where the frequency spectrum is for the guitar player. Go, oh no, let me stay low. Or you can just pay attention and do so much more creatively in a band if you know what you're doing ahead of time.
Right, yeah, and just to add on to that, it's, people are there, as we've both said, for an atmosphere, not just to watch you play. Well, yeah, to watch you play, they're there for an atmosphere. So if you've got a good stage show, if you're grooving, they're going to groove as well, regardless of what you're playing. And, it's all good being able to improvise, but if you are like, bass face on stage, just as you were doing before, people are going to look at the other musicians and just not care that you're even there, which is why bass players unfortunately have that name of being, boring guitarists. If all the memes of guitarists moving to bass because they've lost their guitarist and now they hate their job.
Yeah.
And it's all good having a good stage performance, but if you're not nailing the music that you're playing, then it's going to be cringy. Like me, for example, the reason why I've got so much energy is because I'm at a point where I can play, and this is not meant to sound big-headed at all, but I can play my band's songs, including the covers, so well that I could play them in my sleep. So then I can focus less on the actual songs than I can my performance. So it's extremely important to, make sure you know what you're playing. And as soon as you know what you're playing, then you can give a bit of a stage show. I mean, there's bass players who know what they're playing and can improvise to extremely difficult things, but still don't have a stage show. Like John Young from Dream Theater, one of the best bass players to walk the earth, and Clay Gober from Polyphia. In fact, he's a bit better. But John Young, he's up here playing all of his notes, and people are watching like, one day I'll be there. One day, my dream. And if you watch him, he's just like head down doing his thing the whole show. And I guess he's preserving his energy and putting more of the concentration into the music and the, weird time signatures that Dream Theater use. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's acceptable for somebody like him. And it's the same with John Petrucci as well. One of the best guitar players to walk the earth, but his stage show is a bit dead, and you're there more for the music rather than to see them on stage. They might as well play backstage sat down. What difference does it make?
Don't leave the green room. Just plug in from there.
You can watch the crowd on the TV in the green room live, and you can just play and just watching them all bobbing their heads.
Yeah. Well, maybe he was preparing for COVID life, where now you have no choice but to play from the comfort of your own.
Right. Of course.
Yeah, but Thomas, thanks so much for being on the show. We've been chatting about gear like almost a whole hour now, and what you said is so good. And guys, bass players watching, hear me when I say this, as a red beard, slightly old, a little bit seasoned bass player, I want to tell you this, and it applies to everything in life, that hard work will always outwork talent when talent fails to work hard. And I want to leave you with that. Also, I want to give a shout out to the one and only Bartolini Pickups and Electronics, because they reposted Thomas's post here. I want to throw
They're
them
amazing.
up.
Yeah.
I just want to give them some love. They
post everything. If you click on their profile, they've reposted quite a lot of my stuff. Nearly every video I posted once.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Super awesome. They love the bass player community, and they're just really good. They make great electronics. I had an issue. I had a slight internal issue when I was building this electronic bass, this custom bass, and they are sponsored and are dealers of EMG. And I had only played Bartolini for the last 10 years, and I was really having an internal struggle. And I had to get them to tell me, like, no, EMG is good too. And I'm still not sure how I feel about it. I still feel like Bartolini is the thing closest to my heart. This is growing on me. I love the EMG, but Bartolini's band. Guys, thank you for the support. Bass players who are watching, thank you for the support. And do what Thomas did. Put the comments below. Hit me up on Instagram. Let me know you're in the community. You're a bass player. Let's be a part of Let's Talk Bass. Let's give a voice to the bass community, whether you're in a band, whether you're just getting started, whether you're 80 years old and you've been playing ever since bass was invented. I want to have a chat with you. I want to see what you're doing, how things are going in life. But guys, you know what time it is. Be ready to tune in for the next one. Again, I already have a guest lined up for the next show. You're going to love this guy. He's local to me, an amazing guy. He's an incredible bass player. But yeah, that's gonna be pretty much it. Don't forget to connect with Thomas. We have his personal Instagram in the description below. We also have the link to Steel Mage on the Spotify if you want to rock out right after this video is done. And yeah, that's going to be about it. Thomas, any last closing words for the people, the community?
Well, firstly, if you have tuned into this live stream, we both really appreciate that, because as bass players, people don't seem to care about bass players as much as any other instrument, as it seems. And by watching live streams like this, not just on this channel and being a part of this, you know, if you've got experience, but the benefit of watching things like this is that, you know, me personally, when I started playing bass, I knew nothing. So I didn't have any advice from anyone. I just sort of went with what sounded good and doing research on YouTube. And there were so many questions that I had that just didn't get answered until I joined platforms like Instagram, and I was able to see what people were doing. I was able to, you know, learn things by ear. So it's good to go on live streams and watch videos of people who may have similar questions to you, because, you know, people would have been in your position, and it will help a lot. But thank you for tuning in if you have done.
Yeah, I appreciate those words. This is definitely something I wish I had many years ago. I wasted a lot of money and time trying to figure things out, just watching videos and what was it? Talk bass forums. I was talking to a bass player the other day, an older guy that was like, "You remember forums and talk bass?" He was like, "Your live show actually reminds me of that." I was like, "Man, I used to just search forums all day." This was before even Google, like trying to figure something out.
Talk bass is quite good, actually. I've used it a few times.
Yeah. Thomas, again, thank you. I think I'm going to do some more rocking out to Steel Mage right after this. Guys, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, and in the meantime, I just have one question for you. And it's this. Slap that like button like Victor Wooten slaps some bass.